Imagine being stripped of your name, your identity reduced to a number, death all around you. Hope is punished, and yet something inside you refuses to die. This is not fiction. It's the true story of Viktor Frankl, a brilliant psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, lost everything, his parents, his wife, his freedom, but discovered something in the ashes that changed the world: the power of meaning. In the darkest corners of Auschwitz, Frankl watched men crumble and others rise, not because they were stronger, but because they had a why. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, isn't just about survival. It's a blueprint for enduring any suffering, grief, trauma, heartbreak by discovering your deeper purpose. Frankl didn't believe we're driven by pleasure or power. He believed we're driven by meaning, and when we lose it, we lose ourselves. He gave this philosophy a name, logotherapy, and it's not theory. It was born inside the camps, tested in horror, and it worked. In this video, you'll discover why some prisoners gave up and others survived, how love, memory, and courage gave strength when food and freedom were gone, how Frankl turned unimaginable pain into a message that still saves lives today. If you've ever felt lost, numb, or wondered what the point of it all is, this story will speak to you, because it isn't just a Holocaust memoir. It's a guide to staying human when life feels inhuman. Welcome to Narrative Society, where stories open minds and meaning drives the soul. Subscribe now. This is one video you won't forget. Before we talk about survival, before we talk about strength, we must confront the question that haunted every prisoner in the camps: why stay alive when everything is stripped away? Family, freedom, dignity, what remains to hold on to? Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, believed the answer lay not in physical endurance, but in the pursuit of meaning. In the concentration camps, Frankl observed that those who found a purpose beyond themselves were more resilient. They endured the same horrors as others: starvation, forced labor, the constant presence of death, but their inner lives were different. They clung to visions of loved ones, unfinished work, or a future they believed they were meant to fulfill. This sense of purpose became their shield against despair. Frankl's experiences led him to develop logotherapy, a form of psychotherapy centered on the idea that the primary human drive is not pleasure or power, but meaning. Unlike Freud's will to pleasure or Adler's will to power, Frankl proposed the will to meaning as the fundamental motivation in life. He argued that even in the most miserable circumstances, life has potential meaning, and thus even suffering is meaningful. Logotherapy posits that we are not driven by our circumstances, but by our responses to them. Frankl famously wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This choice," he believed, is what defines us. The search for meaning, according to Frankl, can be fulfilled in three ways: through work, doing something significant; through love, caring for another person; and through courage during difficult times. In the camps, Frankl found meaning by imagining himself lecturing after the war about the psychological lessons learned from the Holocaust. This mental projection gave him a goal to strive toward, a reason to survive. Frankl also introduced the concept of the existential vacuum, a feeling of emptiness and meaninglessness that he observed in many of his patients. He believed that this vacuum was the root of many psychological problems, including depression and aggression. Logotherapy aims to help individuals fill this vacuum by discovering a personal sense of purpose. In practice, logotherapy involves techniques such as de-reflection, which shifts attention away from oneself, and toward others, and paradoxical intention, where patients are encouraged to engage in their feared behavior to diminish the fear. These methods are designed to help individuals confront and embrace their anxieties, leading to personal growth. Frankl's insights are not confined to the past. In today's world, where many grapple with feelings of emptiness and a lack of direction, his emphasis on finding meaning is more relevant than ever. Whether facing personal hardships or broader societal challenges, the pursuit of purpose can provide a guiding light. By embracing the will to meaning, individuals can navigate life's adversities with resilience and hope. Frankl's legacy teaches us that even in the darkest times, we have the power to find meaning and, through it, the strength to persevere. Suffering is part of life, but according to Viktor Frankl, it does not have to be meaningless. In fact, suffering can be the very place where meaning is born. This idea was not abstract for Frankl. It came from years spent in Nazi concentration camps, where suffering surrounded him, raw, relentless, and cruel. Yet he saw a pattern. Those who endured with a sense of purpose did not just survive. They held on to their humanity. Frankl wrote, "If there is a meaning in life at all, then there must be a meaning in suffering." This was not a philosophical comfort. It was a survival tool. In the camp, where men were reduced to numbers and death could come without warning, the only constant was pain. But some prisoners would wake up each day with a reason, a memory, a mission, a belief that something waited for them outside the fences. That belief transformed their suffering into something else, something sacred. He shared the story of a fellow inmate who survived by clinging to the thought of a child waiting for him. Another found strength in the dream of finishing scientific work that only he could complete. The pain did not disappear, but it became bearable because it now had a direction. It became a path, not just a pit. Frankl did not claim suffering was necessary to find meaning. He simply believed that when suffering is unavoidable, it offers us a chance to discover a deeper layer of ourselves, a layer that is not touched by loss or fear, a layer made of purpose. He wrote about how he used to picture himself speaking in a lecture hall after the war, describing the psychological experience of life in a concentration camp. This mental image gave him strength. It reminded him that his suffering had a reason, one that extended beyond the barbed wire. That thought helped him endure the present. This leads directly to Frankl's most powerful idea, the power of choice. We may not control what happens to us, but we always control how we respond. In his words, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This was not a slogan. It was the conclusion of his lived experience. He saw men beaten, stripped, starved, and still choosing dignity. He saw kindness in the camp. When one prisoner gave his last piece of bread to another, that, to Frankl, was freedom. This is the freedom of attitude. It means that even in total suffering, we can choose how we interpret our situation. We can decide whether we give up or keep going, whether we become bitter or brave, whether we lose ourselves or find something greater. Frankl did not deny that suffering hurts. He did not pretend it was easy, but he insisted it could be meaningful. The key is choice. When we say yes to life, even when life says no to us, we reclaim power. We stand up, not because we are unhurt, but because we are unbroken in spirit. He taught that this inner freedom cannot be taken, not by guards, not by fate, not by fear. It is our last human freedom, and with that freedom comes responsibility. We are responsible for how we live, how we endure, and how we treat others, even in pain. In the camps, Frankl saw that those who lost sight of their meaning became weak, hopeless, and vulnerable. But those who held on to meaning through suffering, through silence, through sickness, found strength in places they never thought existed. Suffering, then, becomes a mirror. It shows us who we are, and when we respond with courage and purpose, it can show us who we are meant to be. We have to ask what sustains a person when everything else falls away. Viktor Frankl believed that meaning arises from three places: our work, our love, and our courage in suffering. These, he said, are the pillars that hold a life together. Not wealth, not pleasure, not fame, but what we give to the world, who we love in the world, and how bravely we walk through pain. Frankl wrote that the first way to find meaning is through work, by doing or creating something. It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be known by others. It just has to be real, a craft, a project, a purpose. The feeling that what you are doing matters to someone, even if that someone is only yourself. A man can endure terrible conditions, he said, if he believes he is serving a greater purpose through his efforts. This is not just about occupation, it's about contribution, what we build, what we shape, what we offer to the world. That becomes a reason to keep going. Then there is love. The second great path to meaning. Frankl believed that love was the highest goal a person could aim for. In the camps, he would think of his wife. He didn't know if she was alive or dead, but her image gave him strength. He said, "The salvation of man is through love and in love." Love for another person allows us to transcend ourselves. In loving someone, we become more than just an individual trying to survive. We become a part of something sacred. He observed that those who loved deeply, who had someone they were devoted to, had a kind of inner armor. They could survive because their hearts were already attached to something outside the wire fences, something that gave them a reason to return. Frankl's message was clear: even if you are powerless in every other way, you still have the power to love, and in that love, you may find your strength. The third path to meaning, he said, is found in suffering itself. When we can no longer change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Courage in suffering means not giving in to bitterness. It means enduring pain without letting it destroy our dignity. Frankl wrote that suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds meaning. That does not mean suffering is good. It means suffering can be faced, transformed, and made into something that elevates the soul rather than crushes it. He described how, in the camps, some prisoners chose to comfort others, share their bread, or speak a kind word. These small actions were acts of courage, and through these acts they created meaning even when their own lives were nearing the end. Frankl believed that how a person bears suffering is a measure of their humanity. It is the ultimate test. And to pass that test is to find meaning in places where most people only see despair. But meaning is not automatic. It must be discovered, claimed, lived. Frankl warned that modern life has made this search more difficult. In a world of comfort and convenience, many people lose their connection to deeper values. They chase distractions, not direction. And this leads to what he called the existential vacuum. The existential vacuum is a state of inner emptiness. It's when life feels hollow, aimless. Without substance, you may have everything: money, entertainment, success, but still feel nothing. You go through the motions. You wake up, you go to work, you come home. But beneath it all, there's a question that won't go away. What's the point? Frankl believed this vacuum is one of the greatest psychological dangers of the modern era. It's not that people are sick, it's that they're lost. They have no why, so the how of life becomes unbearable. In the absence of meaning, they turn to boredom, addictions, and empty pleasures to fill the silence inside. He saw this in his patients. People who had no serious mental illness, yet felt a deep, chronic dissatisfaction, a sense that something was missing. He wrote that many neuroses of the time were not medical, but existential, and the cure was not medication, but meaning. Frankl's solution was not to give people meaning, but to help them discover it. Meaning cannot be handed down like advice. It has to be experienced. It has to be lived. One person may find meaning in raising a child, another in building a school, another in writing music. The point is not the form, but the force behind it. He called this the will to meaning, the drive within each person to find purpose, to make sense of life, to belong to something bigger than the self. This will, when ignored, leads to despair, but when followed, it gives strength. It becomes the quiet engine that moves a life forward. Frankl challenged the modern world to stop distracting itself from this search. He urged people to face the emptiness honestly, to ask the hard questions, and then to answer them, not with words, but with action, with love, with work, with bravery. Because in the end, he believed, life means something, even when it is hard, even when it is short, even when it is painful, and our task is not to wait for that meaning to arrive, but to rise up and meet it. We must confront the question that haunted every prisoner in the camps. Why stay alive when everything is stripped away? Family, freedom, dignity. What remains to hold on to? Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, believed the answer lay not in physical endurance, but in the pursuit of meaning. Frankl often quoted Nietzsche, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." This idea became a lifeline. In the camps, prisoners who found a reason to live, be it a loved one, unfinished work, or faith, could endure unimaginable suffering. Those without a purpose often succumbed to despair. One inmate believed he would be freed on a specific date. This hope sustained him, but when liberation didn't come, he lost the will to live and died shortly after. This illustrates the power and danger of hope without a grounded purpose. Frankl emphasized that meaning isn't something we ask from life, it's something life asks from us. We must respond by taking responsibility for our own existence. He proposed the idea of a statue of responsibility to complement the Statue of Liberty, symbolizing that freedom comes with the duty to live meaningfully. In the camps, Frankl observed that those who lost faith in the future were doomed. He wrote, "The prisoner who had lost faith in the future, his future, was doomed. Conversely, those who found meaning through love, hope, or duty managed to survive." In prisoner endured by imagining his child waiting for him. Another found purpose in the hope of completing scientific work. Frankl's experiences led him to develop logotherapy, a form of psychotherapy centered on the idea that the primary human drive is not pleasure or power, but meaning. He argued that even in the most miserable circumstances, life has potential meaning, and thus, even suffering is meaningful. By embracing the will to meaning, individuals can navigate life's adversities with resilience and hope. Frankl's legacy teaches us that even in the darkest times, we have the power to find meaning and, through it, the strength to persevere. In a world constantly searching for comfort, pleasure, and ease, people still feel anxious, restless, and overwhelmed. Viktor Frankl warned about this paradox decades ago. His answer was not to avoid suffering, but to face it differently. He believed that suffering, when given a reason, could become a source of strength, not an enemy to escape, but a challenge to meet with meaning. A person struggling with anxiety may feel lost in the noise of expectations. Frankl's logotherapy would ask, what meaningful task is being avoided? Not what went wrong, but what purpose remains untouched. He believed many mental health struggles stem from an existential vacuum, a feeling of inner emptiness when life lacks purpose. This vacuum is widespread in modern life, masked by distractions and comforts that cannot fill the need for meaning. In daily routines, Frankl's teachings shine with quiet power. A nurse exhausted by burnout might ask not how to reduce her workload, but what deeper purpose her work serves. A student feeling lost in their studies may find motivation not in grades, but in the dream that led them to learn in the first place. Frankl urged people to stop asking, "What can I expect from life?" and start asking, "What does life expect from me?" This shift changes everything. When a person accepts that their suffering has value, when it becomes a test, a duty, a story still unfolding, it no longer crushes them. It becomes bearable. It can even become beautiful, Frankl said. In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. The courage to reframe pain is not passive. It demands honesty. It asks people to look at their struggles and see a call, not a curse. In a world chasing ease, this is radical. The strength of the human spirit is not loud. It often hides in silence, in dignity, in choices made without applause. Frankl saw this in the camps. A man who gave away his last piece of bread, a woman who whispered a prayer before sleep, a prisoner who refused to hate. These were not signs of weakness. They were victories of spirit, proof that even in places designed to break the soul, some people chose humanity. Frankl said, "The last freedom is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This is the essence of dignity. It cannot be taken. It must be surrendered." And Frankl chose not to surrender it. He believed that life asks something of each person, not just in great moments, but in the quiet hours. To love someone, to finish a task, to bear suffering with grace. These are calls to which the human spirit can rise again and again. In the end, it was not food or strength or cleverness that kept some people alive. It was meaning, a reason, a why, and that why was different for everyone, but equally powerful. The lesson Frankl left behind is not just about survival in camps, it's about daily life. When overwhelmed by pain, confusion, or despair, meaning remains possible. It is not handed to us. It must be chosen, built, believed in. And when it is, the human spirit can rise higher than the suffering. It can rise beyond the darkness. Not through denial, not through escape, but through purpose, through love, through courage. Frankl called this the triumph of the human spirit, and that triumph is still possible, anywhere. Rebuilding after liberation was far from the end of suffering for many survivors. The moment the barbed wire fell away and the camps emptied did not bring immediate peace or relief. Instead, it opened the door to new struggles, mental, emotional, and physical, that often proved heavier than the horrors endured within the camps. Frankl himself described this period as a time when the weight of trauma bore down in unexpected ways. The liberation was not a clear-cut victory, it was a complex beginning. Survivors faced a daunting return to a world that had moved on without them. Families were lost or scattered, homes destroyed or taken over, and entire communities had vanished. The world outside the camps was unfamiliar and alienating. Survivors often encountered indifference or misunderstanding from those who could not grasp the depth of their trauma. This disconnection deepened their sense of isolation. The post-war years revealed a paradox. Many who had endured unimaginable suffering found the psychological wounds of freedom and return harder to heal than the physical hardships of imprisonment. Frankl noted how the survivors who had clung to hope within the camps sometimes struggled to find meaning when the immediate threat was gone. The urgency that once fueled survival gave way to a void. Some felt lost without a clear purpose, and that absence could be as deadly as starvation. Amid this landscape of pain, Frankl's philosophy offered a beacon. His belief that life demands meaning, even or especially after suffering, became a lifeline. He insisted that surviving the camps was not merely about endurance, but about what one did with that survival. Meaning was not something given, it was something one had to create anew. This insight became central to rebuilding lives shattered by war. Frankl's own experience illustrated this principle. He found solace and strength in his commitment to help others rediscover purpose, turning his trauma into a mission. His work as a psychiatrist focused on logotherapy, the therapy of meaning, which became a tool for healing in a broken world. He showed that even after the worst atrocities, the human spirit could be revived through the pursuit of meaningful goals. Logotherapy found practical applications beyond the survivors of war. It emerged as a powerful approach in various fields, particularly in therapy for those struggling with addiction, grief, and depression. The core idea that human beings are driven by a will to meaning resonated with people facing modern challenges that often feel overwhelming or pointless. Addiction, for example, could be reframed as a symptom of an existential void, and recovery as a journey back to purpose. In grief support, logotherapy helped individuals transform loss into a source of renewed commitment and growth. The experience of losing a loved one no longer had to end in despair. It could be a painful but fertile ground for discovering what matters most. Frankl's approach invited people to find meaning even in suffering rather than to deny or escape from it. The relevance of Frankl's teachings extends deeply into daily life. The pressures of modern society, career stress, relationship breakups, financial uncertainty, and the constant hum of anxiety often provoke feelings of emptiness or disillusionment. The existential vacuum Frankl described continues to haunt many, leaving them searching for something beyond material success or superficial pleasure. Frankl's work reminds us that these struggles are not just psychological dilemmas, but fundamentally spiritual challenges. The search for meaning remains central to human existence. It is the thread that connects past and present, suffering and hope, failure and resilience. When life feels chaotic or meaningless, turning inward to ask, "What is my purpose?" can be the first step toward healing and growth. The legacy of man's search for meaning lies in this timeless truth. Meaning is not a luxury reserved for the fortunate, but a necessity for all. It transforms suffering into a source of strength and turns the act of living into a creative endeavor. Frankl's message continues to inspire millions, providing a framework for confronting pain with courage and emerging with a renewed sense of self. In the modern world, where distractions abound and superficial comforts often mask deeper voids, Frankl's insights offer clarity They call us to look beyond immediate circumstances and connect with a larger purpose. Whether it is through work, love, or acts of courage in suffering, the pursuit of meaning is what sustains us. Even in moments of profound uncertainty, meaning anchors the soul. It is the compass that guides us through darkness, the light that reveals the path forward. For Frankl, the will to meaning is not just a psychological theory, but a fundamental human truth, one that challenges each of us to live deliberately, responsibly, and fully, no matter the hardships we face. Even in the darkest depths of human suffering, Viktor Frankl found that the mind remained a sanctuary untouched by external chains. When every physical freedom was stripped away, when prisoners were reduced to mere numbers, subjected to brutal labor, starvation, and the constant threat of death, there still existed a space within each person that could never be seized. The freedom to choose one's attitude, this mental freedom, Frankl asserted, is the last refuge of human dignity. He observed that while guards controlled bodies, they could not control the spirit unless the prisoner allowed them to. The capacity to decide how to respond, to find meaning in even the most horrific circumstances, was a powerful act of defiance and survival. It was this freedom of the mind that preserved a flicker of humanity amid the relentless dehumanization of the camps. Frankl famously wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." This choice is the core of his philosophy and the foundation of logotherapy. Even when the external world collapses into chaos, the internal world remains sovereign. It is in this realm that hope, purpose, and meaning can be nurtured despite unthinkable pain. This idea challenges a fundamental assumption about freedom. It's not merely about physical movement or external liberties. True freedom is an inner state, the ability to remain psychologically autonomous, to decide one's stance towards suffering and hardship. Frankl's experience proved that this freedom could never be confiscated, no matter the cruelty inflicted upon the body. Within this profound insight lies the heart of what Frankl called tragic optimism. It is the capacity to maintain hope and find meaning in life despite its inevitable tragedies, suffering, and losses. Tragic optimism is not naive positivity or blind faith. It is a realistic acknowledgement of life's hardships, coupled with a resolute commitment to transcend them through meaning. Frankl's tragic optimism does not glorify suffering, nor does it romanticize pain. Instead, it calls for an honest recognition that suffering is part of the human condition. What matters is how we engage with that suffering. Can we transform it into something valuable, something that shapes us rather than destroys us? This transformation does not happen by ignoring pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It arises from a conscious choice to find purpose within misery, to see beyond the immediate agony to a deeper significance. Frankl wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. This shift in perspective is at the core of tragic optimism. Hope is not the expectation that suffering will vanish, but the belief that it can serve a higher purpose. Meaning can be found in acts of courage, love, and sacrifice, even in the face of despair." This is why Frankl could observe prisoners who, despite physical exhaustion and mental torment, found strength by focusing on a future reunion, a creative work waiting for completion, or the love of someone far away. In this sense, suffering becomes a call to action, an opportunity to assert our humanity and dignity. The tragedy itself is not denied, but it is not the final word. Meaning offers a way to write a new narrative, one that includes suffering but also transcends it. This perspective has profound implications beyond the concentration camps. In everyday life, people face trials, loss, failure, illness, isolation that can feel overwhelming. Frankl's teaching reminds us that no matter how crushing these experiences may be, we retain the power to choose our response. The mind's freedom offers a sanctuary where hope can take root and grow. Tragic optimism is a radical form of resilience. It does not promise a painless life, but assures that life's deepest wounds can yield growth and achievement. It invites us to meet tragedy not with resignation, but with the courage to seek meaning within it. Frankl's reflections on this mental freedom and tragic optimism invite a redefinition of what it means to live well. To live well is not to avoid suffering, but to engage it consciously with dignity and purpose. It is to find light within darkness and meaning within despair. This message resonates deeply in a world often obsessed with comfort and control. It challenges us to confront life's inevitable hardships with a spirit that refuses to be broken. It assures us that even when external circumstances strip us bare, our inner freedom remains inviolable. In this way, Viktor Frankl's legacy is not just a story of survival, but a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. It is a call to reclaim the mind as the last bastion of freedom, where meaning can be forged in the crucible of suffering and hope can bloom amid the ruins. Before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Take a moment, pause, close your eyes if you can. Now ask yourself this simple question. What gives your life meaning right now? Is it someone you love? A dream you haven't given up on? A struggle you're choosing to face with courage? In the comments below, write one sentence that starts with, "My meaning is." It could be powerful. It could be simple. It could be private, but shared with the world here. We read every comment because you matter. Your story matters. And maybe, just maybe, someone else reading your sentence might find their own meaning too. So go ahead, type it below. My meaning is. We're building more than a channel. We're building a society, narrative society. But don't forget to subscribe and like this video if it moved you. There's so much more we'll explore together.